but can we solve something which hitherto was unsolved and leads to betterment of some set of people, not everybody or whatever. So when IITs were created, they helped a few thousand people, that's all. Right? But we don't decry why IITs were created. They didn't solve the problem of millions of people. So if we can create something who are rightly suitable for benefiting from the fourth industrial revolution, across age, young, old, and lifelong learning, all that aspect, we'll try to work on that. So that's the idea.
So just one
Yeah.
point that, as a parent,
Sure.
as a parent that comes to my mind, just before we start. IT is the driver, obviously. We understand that, and it's going to only increase considering the fourth industrial.
IT, actually, all technologies.
All technology.
IT, bio as in genetics, and new forms of energy. To me, these three are converging to make the new drivers. We ignore that part because most of us were not trained around DNA. But that DNA is as important as the computers, etc., knowing about the genome, etc. And they are all helping. So the computer helps you analyze the genome. And knowledge of the genome helps you in so many things. But yes, you can.
Absolutely. So in that case, considering what Sir said, Shok Sir said, that I'm 65, and I feel I'm not that conversant with technology as maybe the youngsters may. I see my own daughter, for example, who's 13. I don't see that kind of an interest in as I would like to assume is there in today's generation when it comes to, though she's conversant with it, obviously she is because she's born with it and she uses it. But for example, computers do have, if I may say so. I mean, at times when I say, what's wrong with you? You know, you have no option but to, I want to really sit on it and learn it. Because you have no option but to live with it. And she says, it doesn't excite me as much as the user and I can manage everything, it's alright. And the point that I'm trying to just make is that how do we define that that minimum skill required, let's say, to an extent. Of course, again, it's ever evolving and everything. That
minimum skill is like reading, writing. It's like reading, writing, listening, and speaking. See, we say that in terms of communication, the four skills that we need is reading, writing, listening, speaking. You have the same thing. Information gathering, information sharing, information organizing. So you have receiving skills and construction skills. So you should first be able to find any piece of information that you are seeking. So if I give you an imperfect piece of information, I say it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. How quickly can you get that this is in Charles Dickens' Tale of Two Cities opening lines? Or any such thing. So because information is all around you. How quickly can you find it? Or are you lost until somebody has given you the precise thing? Finding information indirectly from some trace which has come there and then following it through. So to me, information gathering is a very important skill. Similarly, presenting. If I have to communicate this to somebody, what is the fastest way and the most effective way, or what are the attributes? You may not always want the fastest. So today you have a choice. You can make a video and send, you can make an audio and send, you can send a mail, you can send a message, you can do this, you can do a video call. What would you do? How would you do it? Another important aspect which you kind of said is to be able to validate information. Is this reliable? I see so many grown-ups forwarding something they receive. It is amazing. Somebody last year did this, that Indian national anthem has been declared by UNESCO to be the best national anthem. Educated people forwarded that without. Why would UNESCO on earth want to say whose national anthem is good? But they forwarded and people forwarded. Be proud of India, be proud of this. In our group, we got something, WhatsApp, Golden, this thing. And it was forwarded by a professor in Newport, who's an IT professor who's training everybody. He forwarded also. Others forwarded. So this is another aspect. I think you made a lot of comment about seeing the URL, seeing this, etc., etc. So these are the kinds of skills that what we need here. And then, of course, in terms of
communication, you did mention this in one of your lectures that प्राइमरी एजुकेशन 5वीं 6वीं क्लास तक उस बच्चे को इतना इक्विप कर दो कि वो कंप्यूटर्स, मोबाइल फोन, दूसरी चीजें हैंडल कर ले
और जो
एंड उसको बेसिक स्किल जो आपने दे दी है वो दे दो फ्रॉम द सेकेंडरी एजुकेशन लेवल्स जो मिडिल क्लास में कहते हैं या कुछ इज व्हेन यू रियली स्टार्ट मेकिंग हिम लर्न टू लर्न यू नो सो उसको बस जो व्हाट शशिधर इज डूइंग अनुपम इज डूइंग एट दिस स्टेज that he's taken the responsibility कि मैं तो उसको अपने घर में ही पढ़ाऊंगा बच्ची को and I think it was really such amazing the kid who's never done painting ever He shared with us that painting which a 5-year-old kid has done. My granddaughter, who's about 7 and has gone through a formal learning, she can't do the drawings. When she's good, she's rated as good in the school. The kind of drawings that his daughter has done.
So that also brings us to one point.
Yes.
Sorry, just to add on to that particular point there. When we're talking about learning by yourself, being personalized learners and open education resources and things like that, then and the concept of homeschooling typically, not maybe totally, but to an extent. Then
I will appreciate if you use word unschooling, not
okay, unschooling, whatever be the term for it. What I mean is unschooling. Fine. And parents being facilitators.
Correct.
I'm talking typically in that sense.
Yes.
Right?
Especially what he also mentioned about
Absolutely.
the islands.
And the parents being a part of it.
Correct.
In that sense. In that case, again, building up or providing an opportunity, maybe in a formal environment also, where you are free to explore and learn what you want to learn at that particular point, to whatever extent. So today I'm interested in astronomy and I just want to study that for maybe 6 months or 2 weeks or 2 classes.
6 minutes.
No, my point is, it's up to you. My point is, again,
Right, sure.
I don't know about the validation, certification, the degrees and what, but I like this and I want to do this at this point. My point is simply that. So I walk into a class, I'm like the 3 idiots. I enter a class because I want to learn it and that's what I'm learning and that's my interest.
So, I am a great believer that we have to first tell people what is learning and create a disposition for learning. So I will reflect and I will tell you about myself. See, I realize that I am a lifelong learner. And not only that, apart from my formal learning, I lose no opportunity of learning. And it is very interesting because whenever I will tell you stories, I will also tell you where I heard it, who did it, etc. And I think that is both way. I think it is both a helpful aid in learning, as well as it's part of this thing. So I can tell you about, and I've said this very often. I meet a lot of business people, and they will always want to know what is the consultation fee, and I tell them, देखिए हम आपसे बात कर रहे हैं, जो आपसे हम सीखेंगे वो हमारा, जो हमसे आप सीख लेंगे वो आपका, हम आपको गारंटी करते हैं हम आपसे ज़्यादा सीखेंगे, and that's how I've learned so much about business and business people. I've never done a course on MBA or whatever. I'm a pure simple science PhD, etc. But I've sat with some of the biggest businessmen and the biggest rogues of this country, right? So I said कि हमको सब पता है. So I've learned all the stock market manipulation, this, that they do, under invoicing, over invoicing, ये वो सब कुछ सीखा. और उनसे यही कहता हूँ, उनको होता नहीं आपके साथ के कई लोग होते हैं हर सेशन के पैसे लेते हैं कि जो हमने आपसे सीखा वो हमारा, जो आपने आपसे सीखा वो आपका, गारंटी करता है कि हम आपसे ज़्यादा. Now this disposition of learning from everything is very interesting, and everything is a learning event. In fact, my suggestion to you for your career is to look at organizing learning events, but we'll talk about that later. So everything is a learning occasion, and I've said this, I actually formulated these as Newton's 3 laws. You've heard of Newton's laws of motion?
Yes.
Right? What is first law? Everything continues in state of rest or motion in state.
Unless it is moved by a
I said every person continues in a state of ignorance until there is an intervention which transforms that from ignorance to. The second law is force is proportional to acceleration. If the intervention is very good, your learning will get accelerated. It is not that just you learn something new, but your rate of learning will get accelerated. That is the hallmark of a good instructor. And what is the third law? Every action is equal and opposite reaction. So every learning intervention, the learner learns from the quote-unquote teacher, but the teacher learns about the learner. So that's why an experienced teacher is better. I say this very often. जब मैं अपना पहला क्लास लेने गया था, किसी की शक्ल नहीं देखी थी, चेहरा एकदम लाल था, जो पढ़ के गया था सब बोला है और बोर्ड में लिखा है. फिर जब मैं IIT में पढ़ाता था, तब एक दिन मैं अपने सीनियर कलीग के पास गया. मैंने उनसे कहा कि आज मैं एक्सपीरियंस टीचर हो गया. क्या हुआ? मैंने कहा आज मैं बिना तैयारी के गया था, 1 घंटे मैंने पढ़ाया, हर लड़के से इंटरैक्ट किया और मेरे पास माल बचा था आगे पढ़ाने के लिए. So this is what an experience. That's why the experienced teacher is different from a fresh teacher. Fresh teacher will somehow either finish or be short. जब तक पावर पॉइंट चलेगा नहीं वो बोल नहीं सकेगा, because जब पावर पॉइंट आएगा तब वो बोलेगा. So this is what the whole idea is. If you become a perpetual learner, you will get learning anywhere. You will be able to create.
I want to give an example. Like the way she was talking about the unschooling thing, and like recently we went to this modern art gallery in India. There are many such things in India, in Delhi rather, which can be a very good learning opportunity for people, but people barely go.
Yeah, that is, as I said, what has happened is.
So what happened over there? Like, since I knew my kid has a natural curiosity towards painting, can you imagine when we went there and when she saw this, what was her first question to me? Papa, when will my painting will be over there? And I cannot think that way. She can do because she have all the confidence. I may be thinking, yaar, yahan to bahut bade log hi laga, but she has dared to say. So the idea, and as he was saying, how we will create people like you with those systems. So it is a real big challenge to create people like who are really open-minded. And that's it. So that way this kind of mechanism.
But you have actually pointed out to it. All children are limitlessly curious.
Yes,
We submit them into this thing, right? ये formally करते हैं हमारा education का, और उसका reason है शायद. We want them to be compliant. See, I have said this very often. Education can be a liberating force or a subjugating force. No, we don't want them to think. See, if you want to rule people, we were talking about it earlier also, you want them to be ignorant, right? वो मोदी जी सब कुछ कर देंगे. अरे भाई कैसे करेंगे? ये कोई मतलब नहीं है. Because if you are educated, you will ask. वो बच्चा तुम्हारा बच्चा पूछेगा मोदी जी कैसे करेंगे, नौकरी कहाँ से आएगी, वो तो नहीं. But so we have been submitted into authority, and this has happened in all schooling.
College reforms.
And Macaulay or not Macaulay, it is the authoritarian. See, you have two ways of living. One is by authority. In fact, आप लोगों को सब पता है, पहले राजा का डिवाइन राइट ऑफ किंग्स होता था. रात को राजा को भगवान बताते थे, और जो राजा कहता था वो
Question of
no question. And in fact, that's why they were on the highest in China. में देखिए वो सब किंग का पहले से एकदम ऊंचाई होता, डायरेक्ट एंटेना से गॉड से बात करता था. So the whole idea was that, and you know that it is the first thing was the Magna Carta, where the king's rights were curtailed a little bit.
Correct.
Okay, you will only work according. Then we had our framework of constitutional system, where everybody is sort of before that. But even the way they behave like rulers. So the whole idea was that the king can do no wrong. And now, of course, the government can do nothing right. So that's a different issue.
The leader feel that they are above the law.
But the thing, so this is the issue. So therefore, if you want to rule people, you have to let them be ignorant. If they understand,
Very right.
Whereas in an enlightened place, you want them to be more educated, because you now believe that we can make use of the learning. See, आप लोगों को बोलने तब देंगे जब आप उसको यूज कर सकें. Otherwise, you don't want that. And this is very common human nature. See, most people, authority is the simplest thing. Na? Why? Because I say so. Why do you say so? Because that man says so. That is the point. And being able to, and what we are saying is, as civilization progresses, we move towards rational thinking society. सारा झगड़ा science और religion का हुआ था. If you know Galileo's story and you know the other science, and you may not know, but in US, Darwinian evolution was not allowed to be taught, and maybe in some states it's still not allowed to be taught, because they believed in God's creation. So God ने 7 दिन में बनाया दुनिया और 7वें दिन आराम किया. Now Darwin कहता है नहीं ऐसा नहीं था. So there is a huge problem with respect to Genesis and Darwinism. When I studied in school, and this is not ancient history, I studied in a school called St. Joseph's Convent. Our corresponding counterpart girls at St. Mary's were not allowed to study biology.
My
Okay.
God.
If they wanted to study biology, they had to go to a Hindi medium school called Dwarka Prasad Inter College. Only then they could go to this thing, become a medical doctor. They could only study history, English literature, do courtesy, and so on. But that is
Why
what.
was this, sir? What was the reason?
No, because it was
You
a
didn't want
Catholic
it to-
school, and they didn't want them to know all this.
Engineering नहीं पढ़ाते तुमको.
फिजिक्स शायद पढ़ा देते होंगे, बट बायोलॉजी नहीं पढ़ाते थे.
maths and
Physics, maths कम पढ़ते नहीं but वो था. The idea was that they were not supposed to be in this thing.
अभी मैं
And
एक
it will
चीज
make
बताऊं,
them.
बड़ा अजीब सी चीज है, मेरे को बड़ा अजीब लगी कि I met somebody who has been working into disaster management, like some real UN level and all those levels, and he said like he was doing an event which is for all faith how they think about disaster management, and it was like everybody like Islamic system and the ISKCON system, Buddhism, and all those big organization of religions were there on that event. And then they said, like, recently we have decided we will not say disaster recovery management or disaster management. We have to use it hazard. Because disaster, God doesn't make disaster. So you cannot use disaster, some of the organization. Through the religion thing, they have said that. So they are actually changing internationally the word disaster to hazard. Crazy. Hazard.
Hazard. No, they should put some mathematics and put a plus sign and minus sign and say blessings, divine blessing. Everything is divine blessing, one with plus sign, one with minus sign. Then you're okay. Then there is no problem. थोड़ा mathematics डालने का जरूरत है. Everything is divine grace, everything is divine blessing, plus sign and minus sign. Okay, so let me quickly run through this because I want you genuinely to keep thinking of these issues because we want to have something concrete coming up, things like that. So we said the arrival of the fourth industrial age, we've seen this, there's no debate on this. ये वाला video चलेगा? I've put some videos, I could have just put it as links, but I thought it is good to see them together also. So I have not too many, some 15-20 videos, minute videos. The idea was let's watch these videos together, and then also I want to comment on this. Is there value in seeing videos together, or is it already
In 1998, Kodak had 170,000 employees and sold 85% of all photo paper worldwide. Within just a few years, their business model disappeared and they went bankrupt. What happened to Kodak will happen in a lot of industries in the next 10 years, and most people don't see it coming. Did you think in 1998 that 3 years later you would never take pictures on paper film again? Yet digital cameras were invented in 1975. The first ones only had 10,000 pixels, but followed Moore's law. Starting all exponential technologies, it was a disappointment for a long time before it became way superior and adopts mainstream in only a few short years. It will now happen with artificial intelligence, health, autonomous and electric cars, education, 3D printing, agriculture and jobs. Welcome to the fourth industrial revolution. Welcome to the exponential age. Software will disrupt most traditional industries in the next 5-10 years. Uber is just a software tool. They don't own any cars and are now the biggest taxi company in the world. Airbnb is now the biggest hotel company in the world, although they don't own any properties. Artificial intelligence. Computers become exponentially better in understanding the world. This year, a computer beat the best good player in the world, 10 years earlier than expected. In the US, young lawyers already don't get jobs. Because of IBM Watson, you can get legal advice within seconds, with 90% accuracy compared with 70% accuracy when done by humans. So if you study or stop immediately, there will be 90% less lawyers in the future, only specialists will remain. Watson already helps nurses diagnosing cancer 4 times more accurate than human nurses. Facebook now has a pattern recognition software that can recognize faces better than humans. In 2030, computers will become more intelligent than humans. Autonomous cars. In 2018, the first self-driving cars will appear for the public. Around 2020, the complete industry will start to be disrupted. You don't want to own the car anymore. You will call a car with your phone. It will show up at your location and drive you to your destination. You will not need to park it. You only pay for the driven distance and can be productive while driving. Our kids will never get a driver's license and will never own a car. It will change the cities because we will need 90 to 95% less cars for that. We can transform former parking space into parks. 1.2 million people die each year in car accidents worldwide. We now have one accident every 100,000 kilometers, with autonomous driving that will drop to one accident in 10 million km. That will save a million lives each year. Most car companies might become bankrupt. Traditional car companies try the evolutionary approach and just build a better car, while tech companies will do the revolutionary approach and build a computer on wheels. Insurance companies will have massive trouble because without accidents, the insurance will become 100x cheaper. Their car insurance business model will disappear.
So what are the reasons
of some?
What are the reasons?
These car companies, insurance companies will murder this guy.
No, but you can see, you must, I think,
No, this is innovative.
no, the point I'm trying
No,
to
he's just kidding.
no, not kidding. See, the point I'm trying to make is the following. These are some instances. Let us extrapolate them to our context. See, can we say, see, for example, that IFAC had such school, universities, colleges will disappear. So can we, in our context, try to say these technologies of artificial intelligence, machine, robotics, etc., how do they transform our landscape? For example, to me, all farmers will have robots, and therefore they will all become managers or owners of farm rather than this thing. And this whole idea of the Uber business model and the Airbnb model for education means you don't need so many institutions of this kind, etc. You have teachers being supreme and they will do various kinds, just like doctors go and operate. So what I want is, can we collectively slowly build a scenario for us? See, like we look at the Indian economy, we put these 12 sectors, we do this, we say transportation sector, manufacturing sector. Can we start making some projections that people can relate to? See, when you do things like this, people say, "ये तो वहाँ है, हमारा नहीं होगा." But the same thing will come here. It is not that. And right, but all that I'm saying is just like what Tulsidas did, कि वाल्मीकि की रामायण को popularize कर दिया. Can we do something that these things people can see more directly? Okay. Yeah. So now let's get it. So this is the key thing that we said. Now what I'm saying here is that we blockchain or machine intelligence or computational thinking. ये तीन ऐसी चीज हैं which we have to take to the masses. We have to explain to them how the entire administration will change. सब उद्योग भवन निर्माण भवन फाइलिंग और जिसको सेंट्रल सेक्रेटेरिएट कहते हैं वो जरूरत नहीं होगी. There will be no secretariat. And I think this is what we need to get people to understand. That these are things. Now you may debate whether 5 years or 10 years.
Yes.
But the idea that central secretariat will disappear. I was just now going to, yesterday कहीं मैंने देखा लोकसभा सेक्रेटेरिएट की कॉलोनी बन गई है, न सेक्रेटेरिएट होगा न कॉलोनी होगी. So this is what we need to look at. Training for districts. So what I'm saying is, let the formal system, UGC, IC, do whatever they want. If we train in these 10 skills, whatever method we use, people will want to do this. And training happens at all levels. One, familiarity for everybody. Then next level, then next level. So we can have a 5-level training program on each of them. For example, we said big data, the big picture. Now big data, now becoming a big data scientist, and so on. And you can do this with your whatever device you have. Although I am talking of mobile, I have nothing against a laptop either. The whole idea is that we reach out, and once we do that, certification we can do that. We can have a body, go to so many bodies which certify In UK, you can have private awarding bodies. In fact, we have a private awarding body called the QAI. So anything you want a certificate, I can get you a QAI certificate for that, provided we create a system. Again, but this is important to understand Gartner hype cycle. See, everything there is an over expectation first, and then there is a trough of disillusionment, and then there is a rate of productivity. So you could realize, well, that was too much. It doesn't do all that, but it does that. So this is another thing that we need to be able to say, and you must understand that everything won't change. Just because something efficient is available doesn't mean the others won't disappear. They all coexist. The most efficient flourish and prosper the most, but others also exist. So tractor wala bhi kisan hai or bullock cart wala bhi kisan hai. It is not that tractors came and all bullock carts disappeared. No, they continue. But the tractor ones are more prosperous in this thing.
The only part of this is that earlier
Yeah.
on the x-axis,
Yeah.
the time axis,
Right.
it used to happen over a few decades.
Yeah, now it is
Now
years.
happens over a few months and
Yes, few years, couple of years.
That's how rapid.
So therefore, we will see these cycles multiple times in each
Exactly.
lifetime.
Right, exactly. For each of them, it will be different, and the space will be different. So these are the skills that we talked about. Again, to me, the ones at the fore are most important: cognitive flexibility, complex problem solving, critical thinking, and creativity. And we are definitely going to address these issues. So we already had Pramod Joshi volunteer कि वो उसमें contribute करेगा. I also want to create a whole set of people to do this. While all these ideas are mine and I'm happy to do this, I don't want it to be like all courses coming from Pant. I want to be more of an enabler and facilitator and do things which others are not doing but need to be done. But as soon as I get some, so if he comes in for machine learning, we'll start creating a course on machine learning with him. Yeah, he may be one of the persons who will.
He's probably looking for something else.
Okay. This also you see, and I'm drawing attention again, especially to show that creativity has moved from number 10 to number 1 and number 3. That is a.
आप वो फोन में लगा करते हैं
Huh?
वो फोन ही में लगा वही में लगा क्या
नहीं हो सकता है anyway.
आ जाएगा तो।
Ah. Now this is another important diagram to say that it's just not those. We are eventually human beings. So you must have physical abilities, you must have physical strength, you must have manual dexterity, you must have precision. You know, even if you handle a mobile, you have to have physical. So all those things are also going to be important. And cognitive abilities, content skills, process skills, technical skills. See, you have to have equipment molding, etc. So we just try to put this as a complete thing. This is a very important thing, and we hope to have a special session on this in January. And Shashi has volunteered to provide leadership in this. What I want to emphasize is that, and I said this before, in the pre-industrial age, it was manual labor. And that's why people who had lots of people popular, that's why we wanted large families, we wanted all this kind of stuff. Steam, oil, electricity for energy, raw manual work had less value. But skilled labor became important. Whether you could work in a factory, you had the skills and whether you had dexterity. So, for example, surgery could not be done by machine. But today now, a machine can do stitching of fabric as well as stitching of wound. And therefore, it's completely different. So, value of cognitive work was always high. In fact, I remember when I was in school, the fellow who came for counseling emphasized a lot of blue collar work and white collar work. And we used to call ourselves tinner collar work. Computers began by doing simpler. This is the key feature that till computers came, cognitive tasks were completely, like we said, body, mind, and soul. Cognitive work was like soul work. We didn't know anything about how it happens, what happens, and so on and so forth. And the first computers started doing this by saying, I have memory, I have processing, I have instructions, and I can do that. And that is why that became the starting point. And now it is continuously going more and more, taking more and more cognitive tasks, including facial recognition, emotional understanding, all kinds of patterns with machine intelligence, so that the gap between what humans can do and what machines can do is becoming less and less. So much so that at some level, whatever are the known human activities, machines will surpass them. The first one was chess. So when Big Blue was created, but Big Blue was still algorithmic. It had all the possible moves in a chess and this thing. But what Watson does is that it does not have moves stored. It finds out. And the Go one was something even more interesting. In fact, this why is it very interesting that when you look at what happened for Go, the machine was not trained in it, it observed how people. My question therefore comes is, what will education be in the future? Why would we need to educate people? There's a fundamental question that what do you mean by education and why would we educate people? Yes.
I think which is where I often keep talking about this. The core goal of education is to learn skill,
Yes.
language, not
Right.
to simply get humans to understand the difference between right and wrong.
Yeah.
What is right and what is wrong? Because after all is said and done, and computers become as smart as humans,
Or smarter.
then the only way this planet or such planets will survive would be if humans have the ability to outsmart computers on right and wrong.
No, not necessarily outsmart. You are going to use computer for enhancing yourself.
Enhancing your
Things which you
skill.
want to do, things which I want to do but I can't. So I use, for example, simple drawing of water from a well. I push a button, the motor does that. So I want to do that. That's why I was trying to use the word like renaissance or whatever.
Sure.
The question now I feel is that we have to start thinking what does it mean to be a human being and what does it mean to be me? Now I have this theory that all of us were meant to be unique people. All right, all the 7 billion people in the world are meant to be unique. But the external factors push conformity on us. The family, the state, the business, they said, you start complying with this. You should wear this, you should eat this, you should learn this, you should do this. And in that conformity, we forget our original purpose. And sometimes people find it late in life, sometimes they never find it. And I think what this will liberate us is to really start saying, well, this is what I have to be. And in our Hindu thing, that word is called dharma, that intrinsic nature. जो Ken Robinson element कहता है, that was the that I am meant for this. Now, instead of supporting me in that journey, you are oppressing me and saying, no, you learn physics and go into IIT, or you do this and get in there, or you do a startup and raise fund, or whatever.
The typical example when we were young,
Yes.
the rebel of this was the beatnik and the hippie culture that came.
Yes,
It was just a rebelling of the
Absolutely.
so we're not willing to accept any now.
So that is the
So
thing.
for 10 people are there, 10 rights, 10 wrongs, like
Exactly.
each one is different. But there is a third element, dharma. So which says this is,
Yeah.
for 5 people into right and 5 people into
So
wrong.
that I'll just correct you on this. In Vipassana,
Yeah.
which I have done, the concept and the word of the dharma has totally changed. What we say in that is dharma is just a physical attribute
Yeah.
of that thing.
Intrinsic
It is not.
intrinsic
ये तो sects हैं. जो धर्म हम आज
ये
की
जो
date में
हाँ
realize करते हैं,
रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिस वाला धर्म है
Practice
वो इंट्रिंसिक
वो
नैसर्गिक
intrinsic
प्रवृत्ति की बात
5
है।
elements हैं.
Okay.
आग का काम है जलाना. You know that.
करेक्ट
आग और कुछ नहीं कर सकती. पानी का काम है आपको शीतल करेगा ही करेगा और गीला करेगा ही करेगा. You recognize that. हवा का काम है
आप भी कह रहे हैं सर कि अब तो नया धर्म लॉन्च करो जो आज के टाइम
नहीं वो
का
रिलीजियस प्रैक्टिस है सी आई थिंक दैट्स
this
द
is
बिग
what
थिंग
actually
सी
how the
व्हाट
human
धर्म
being is.
मींस इज व्हाट इज योर
That's what you
इंट्रिंसिक
need to
एट्रिब्यूट
Yeah. Yeah.
ये बाद में इसको उन्होंने
नहीं नहीं वो कई बार एक ही वर्ड का मिसयूज हो जाता है धर्म में जैसे सीएनआर राव बता रहे थे ना तो वो क्या बताते हैं कि 1:2 2p6 3:2 d10 दिस इज योर धर्म and whether you are a positive ion or a negative ion that is your dharma. So whenever you get the other thing you will just go and make a covalent bonding or ionic bonding or whatever. So basically in a sense if I look at it that is your intrinsic nature. But anyway, the whole point is
Sir, just
Yeah,
a
they are
point
unique.
to Sir and Sir
Definitely
made
unique.
in terms of learning or future of education, what I just made. Right or wrong, Absolutely.
very
I think
qualitative.
Right, wrong is a complex
Very, very
very
qualitative.
very qualitative thing. One's right could be others wrong. So
Yeah.
again, we're defining it. कि ये right है, wrong है.
No,
Something.
but see, the issue is,
So substantial difference
for
होगा
the
from
two
this
rights and
to
wrong is different. No? So see, you have to see which context you are in. So that's why महाभारत में वो बताते हैं आप किस तरफ हो. So आपके लिए ये था,
बिल्कुल.
right?
In a
दूसरे
practical
के लिए
scenario.
and in fact, if you look at the world, and because I come from a science background, everything consists of opposites. There's an electron, and therefore there's a positron. There's a magnetic north pole,
That's
all survival.
south pole,
Natural survival.
everywhere.
That's
So
right.
the whole idea of science as well as our religion is that there are two opposites whose coexistence leads to what world we have.
In practical sense, email receiving, it may be spam for me,
Yeah.
but not for you,
Correct.
not for him, but it's a spam for him.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Because that is a contextual and
Because for him it's the useful information.
yes.
So actually, taking on what Baba said is something which I have been looking at this now. So the question is, how do you find out who you are? And one of the thing is Ken Robinson saying about element where your passion meets your intrinsic attribute. But I have been looking at education, as you said, when all knowledge is available, everything is there. What is it that matters? And the Hindi equivalent of that is Mati.
Is Mati.
Mati, Sumati and Kumati. Now if you look at Tulsidas' Ramayana, this comes very often there. एक वो है कि प्रभु जाको दारुण बुद्धि ना वाकी मति पहले हरनी ना जहाँ सुमति वहाँ समृद्धि नाना जहाँ कुमति वहाँ विविध दाना. So the whole idea is that between these two choices, so we are not saying what is right or wrong, but what choice do you make in a sense determines your future or consequences or whatever. So the idea is that after you've learned everything or you could know everything, what do you actually do? And if you believe in right and wrong and path and this thing, there's a word in our thing, I've heard it most from Bengalis, it's called Gyan Papi. Gyan Papi. So see, एक है अज्ञान पापी. He doesn't know and therefore he commits the papi. Gyan Papi is one who knows everything and then commits the thing. And this is attributed, highest example of this is Duryodhana. Duryodhana tells you this, you and I went to the same school. We studied under the same guru. I don't like what it is. He said, I know what dharma is. I can give you all the answer. But I don't like doing that. What I enjoy doing is what is the opposite. So the whole issue in many of these things, and this has come about so often, this debate in terms of all the genetic stuff, genetically modified organisms, it came very seriously in nuclear energy when Robert Oppenheimer wrote that book called Brighter Than a Thousand Suns, and he talked about, in fact, it is very interesting, and I gave that example of cognitive flexibility. Robert Oppenheimer is exploring the nuclear bomb, quoting from Bhagavad Gita about Krishna Vishwaroop and so on and so forth. So so this is the kind of issues that start arising. So anyway, so can we quickly see these two things?
Sure.
Yeah, last 15-minute video, humans did not apply तो आप लोग देख चुके होंगे.
नहीं सर,
वो नहीं देखा.
we can see it because कुछ देखे हैं कुछ नहीं देखे.
नहीं, अभी तो ये दो
पर आगे से ऐसे मिस्टेक है कि जो आपने भेजे हैं वो तो देखना ही देखना है. तो गलती है.
नहीं.
Well, gut instinct by
One of them is a short one.
well, gut instinct by machine. I don't know if I like that. But as clearly evidenced by drastic developments in AI, change is underway. A perfect storm of business model change in all industries, resulting in major disruptions to labor markets. That is what's expected in the near future, according to the World Economic Forum's report on the future of jobs. Now, how so, and what needs to be done to better prepare ourselves for this rapid change? Please feature tonight with
Siri, remind me to pick up my dry cleaning after work today.
Okay, I'm going to.
Siri is a useful tool, but it's not really ready to replace the role of a human processor just yet. That is where the technology is heading.
At the World Economic Forum in Davos last week, Stuart Russell, a leading expert in computer science, suggested that in the future, artificial intelligence will become the ideal personal assistant, perform better than humans, and be available to all.
We're talking about a system which is there on your shoulder and can provide advice and help you navigate the complicated world.
But perhaps that future is already here. A study last year found that between 2001 and 2013, personal assistant jobs in the UK have fallen by 45%. Other occupations such as library assistants and travel agents also saw huge declines. The report concluded that the losses were mainly among jobs where productivity had been greatly improved by technology.
Jobs which are standardized, repetitive, and involve patterns are jobs that will be taken up by artificial intelligence and robots. For instance, in the US, 75% of Wall Street trading is being made by computers. Even in journalism, sports, and finance, news reports can be produced by AI autonomously.
Researchers at the University of Oxford in 2013 said that 47% of jobs in the US could potentially be done solely by machines within 10 to 20 years. The study also said that any job that involves a little social intelligence, creativity, and perception is at risk. Further studies showed that Korea is especially at higher risk of losing jobs, as it has been estimated that 63% of the country's workforce could be computerized.
Our research found that it's a very risky situation, far more so than that in the US and other developed countries. The reason is because the ratio of Korean jobs that involve simple manual skills or office administration work is higher than other places.
But the research paper offers hope in that new fields will open up, especially in IT and software development. The social business networking website LinkedIn put together a list of the top 10 job titles that barely existed before 2008. 8 out of 10 were from digital industries, with iOS and Android software developers coming out on top. Academics and business leaders agree that the changing nature of the job market in general cannot be stopped, and that the next task at hand is for society to adapt to such changes.
Those already working will need to go through a re-education. Moreover, they need to study new fields in order to survive, and for that, universities and the government need to provide related courses for financial support.
And retraining is responsibility to the corporation. If we know the future, and I think we're almost crystal clear that we know the future, that's what we're talking about, that we have to start to retrain the people. And also we have to work with the government to really create the future talent to be more adapted to the future trend.
The fourth industrial revolution is coming. It should make our lives easier, better, and more productive. But for some of us, it might not happen if our jobs and livelihoods become collateral damage. To prepare for it, more steps need to be taken by governments, businesses, and of course, ourselves. Konjawa, and that news.
Well, gut instinct by machine.
So the thing is interesting. First, you began that I got extinct by a machine. The robot that they showed at the end is something called Baxter, which learns by itself. You don't have to program. So machine intelligence and robotics is being put together. Therefore, the fundamental question that starts arising is, what do you mean by education? And what do you mean by education after school? As he said, it's not for skills. What is it for? In the near term. At one level, you can say that learning is its own reward, talking about spiritual journey, etc. You also have a huge problem now about what do you mean when you say youth has come of age. Our model is that till you are 18, 21, you are in a protected environment. 18 to 21, you go out to the world, and 21 onwards, you are an active part of the world. What does that mean? Because going out to get a job, etc., will not be there. The other thing you might not have noticed, but I think I have guessed, I'm not 100% sure. In the previous video, the voiceover was a machine. And I'm saying this because when it talked about insurance, it says car accidents take 1 million lives a year is what we would say, but he said lives a year. And that is where I thought that maybe this is machine bred, because a human being would have said 1 million lives a year. 1 million lives a year would be machine, definitely, quite possible, or could be somebody very weak in English, but why would they bring such a person to do the audio narration? So that is another interesting point. There is one more 15-minute video which I really want you to see, and then whatever time remains, we will continue with our discussion. This is really interesting. It's a little longer.
So I love this session because it's truly about the Renaissance, and in fact, my talk today is about the next human Renaissance. And the nice thing about talking about that is we get to go back in history and think about the first Renaissance, which was truly an awakening where art like this came out where it never did before. In fact, people painted essentially themselves doing the things they wanted to do in the Renaissance, which is truly an awakening of the human spirit and the human mind. But other than that period of time, most of our life is spent working. And we've been working for tens of thousands of years doing different jobs. And we do those different jobs so much that they become us. In fact, when someone asks you, hey, Mary, what do you do? She says, well, I do this. So much so that even Jesus' father is known as Joseph the carpenter. We become known by the things we're doing, even though this is a job and we're really only doing it to pay the bills for the most part. That's why we're forced to do this kind of work. So somehow we become known by it, but what happens when it goes away? What happens if humans are obsoleted in the next 50 years for the kinds of jobs that we've always done? Where all this new technology that's coming along changes what we would do every day. So first of all, what would we do? We sit and watch TV all day? I hope not. And number two, how do we define ourselves? Because we've been used to defining ourselves since the beginning of time is what we do. And that's a big change. Now, I first started thinking about this way back in '97. I ran a program, a big project for General Magic, about a $100 million program to replace the secretary and create something called the virtual assistant. And here's a little bit of a video from that time.
Must be the chief. I told Sarah getting my virtual assistant was called for.
Good morning, gentlemen. I've got the chief on the phone. He says it's urgent. Should I put it through? Do you want me to take a message?
Put him through. Chief, I'm in the middle of a massage. You
have 3 voicemails, 1 email, and 2 faxes. Shall I read them now?
Yes, please.
The first message is from your mother, received today.
Yes. Read me my email messages.
You have email from Frank Huffner, instructor, International Spy School.
The idea was truly to replace what we knew as the assistant at that time. Some of that technology has come along, but regardless of what came along and didn't come along, the big learning we took from that is that people began to treat that machine like Mary, which was what we called her Mary. And so people called her Mary, they talked to Mary, they said all kinds of obscene things to Mary. That's what they did. And this was a very, very interesting experiment. And it took a lot of horsepower at that time. That's me standing in the operations center at that time. There were dozens and dozens of rows and thousands of computers to make that service work way back in '97. Well, we're going to go back further to the first time we really started to replace humans in jobs, to 1961. It's the first industrial robot that was installed at GM at the time called the Unimation. It did very, very little. It could weld some joints. And it was about $1 million in today's dollars. But everything in the last few years, mostly driven by cell phones, smartphones, has been driving down so fast down this cost curve that it's changing the way we think about robotics. The sensor prices for gyroscopes and MEMS are just completely driving downward towards zero. That's a gyroscope from 1945 and a gyroscope in 2014. It's just a little thing for $1. And not only that, the transit price, the cost of driving data, of getting data to us, continues to drive downward. It continues to move downward to the point of zero. That is, getting data and moving data is basically free. And the cost of computing has continued to drive towards zero, from $1 trillion to a trillionth of a penny for 1 million instructions per second. Now, all of that adds up to the fact that on our desktop today, we can have a computer that is somewhere between the intelligence of a monkey and a human on our desktop for $200 or $300. And that's not all. We've made great strides in showing that the biggest computers in the world can actually be way smarter than humans. It was back in 1997 that the first computer beat the grand chess champion of the world. And it was only 3 years ago that Watson won against the grand champions of Jeopardy. And this was truly a turning point because of the natural language understanding that had to be embedded in that computer system. That's what was hard. And we finally broke that code in 2011. That's already 3 years ago. So the tipping point isn't near, but it's actually here. In the past, when we looked to outsource labor and to drive down the cost of goods, we would go further and further away from the United States, and eventually went to China. All of our goods are made in China. Many of our goods are made in China today. However, just in the last 2 or 3 years, the tipping point has occurred in China, where now robotics and automation are cheaper than the average Chinese factory worker wage. Now that's a real issue. That's a real issue because there's no further to go. So what happens is the 400,000 people looking at your iPhones today might be 40,000 just a few years from now. And in fact, why even make it over there? You can make it here, because if it's all robotics, the cost is the same. And that's a huge tipping point. We've never seen that point before. By the way, we saw the $1 million robot. Here's the $25,000 robot. It does much more than the $1 million robot did. And with a simple software upgrade, doubled its capacity in 1 year. Can you double your capacity with a software upgrade in a year? I can't. This is faster than any human can do the job, and it pays for itself in 1 year, and after that it's free for the next 20. One human can run dozens of these things. His name is Baxter, by the way. So now we're reaching a tipping point where the technology as a whole, computer sensors, robotics, and communication, are faster, smarter, more reliable than humans already today. They'll work all the time, far less expensively, and they're factual. They don't lie, and they don't guess. We could break down the end of human work into 3 categories: now, soon, and 50 years from now. Now, soon, and 50 years from now. And I'm going to pose the fact, in my mind, that in fact, all of the jobs go away within the next 50 years. And this is happening already. Over the last 20 years, we've seen routine occupations head downhill as a percentage of our workforce. So more of our workforce is working in more complex opportunities that are using our minds more. Here's an example of restaurant tablets. Many of you have already probably run into this at your favorite restaurant. And what happens is this reduces labor by 40%. You can place your order and you can pay for your order right there. And you don't have to talk to anyone. And it works. It's amazing. Not only that, the customers were happier and the order accuracy is 100%. Now, here's the towel butler that's now in Loft Hotels. Very, very interesting, because this will deliver warm towels to your room at your beck and call. Can you imagine what happens when you mix the towel butler with what's going on in restaurants, and now it's the food butler? And now the cost of labor goes to 0%, because you don't need a waiter or a waitress. And quite likely, the patrons really happy. Someone's got to cook, or do they? This is the automatic hamburger machine. It makes burgers for 90% lower cost than the way we make them today, and faster. This is the home kitchen robot. It cooks in the kitchen for you and delivers meals to you. However, it's very expensive. It's only in a lab, but this is what's coming. Over the next 10 to 20 years, we'll have a robot in our kitchen. It'll be a few $1,000s. It'll make your meals for you, and it'll also clean while it's not busy making meals. It'll also order the food that morning for delivery fresh. And when you come home at 6, your meal will be there. Yay! And by the way, there won't be a UPS driver or some other driver driving your vehicle to drive your package there, because they're going to be delivered with drones, which eliminates 80 to 90% of package delivery in this country and cuts the labor cost by 80%. And that's not the only drones. Here's a company that's working on robo-ships, because they figured out that a ship without a captain that might be drinking or might be asleep at the wheel is much safer than one with one. We have GPS, we have technology, we can get the ship from point A to point B. It's not that hard, folks. So now we're going up the chain, and further up the chain, and we say, can doctors be replaced by computers? Well, computers have up to the minute millions of peer-reviewed papers, CDC info, data from other computer-based docs, data from social media, data from blood, everything else at its disposal. Hundreds of millions or billions of papers and data. And your doctor can store maybe a few hundred pages in his or her head. So yes, I hope that this happens, because that's the person I want to go to. And let me take it a step further. Human genome sequencing has also fallen from thousands of dollars to it's going to be $1, okay, in the next few years. And at those rates, we will know more about ourselves and our being and how we were born and how we came to be than we've ever known. And a doctor wouldn't know what most of the time to do with all that data. So we're going to actually create more data about our bodies that need to go to computers and need to go to systems that can analyze it and help us determine how we live a better life and how we can cure our sickness. But of course, there's surgeons, and there'll always be surgeons. Well, wait, okay, hang on, maybe not. This is the Da Vinci surgical robot. You may have seen that. This is actually run by doctors today. Doctors put their hands in some gloves and manipulate the robot, and then that's what makes the robot operate on your body. I'm sorry, why do I want doctors' hands operating this very delicate instrument? Why wouldn't I want a computer system that can be programmed with all the knowledge of humanity, that can make split-second decisions, literally nanosecond decisions, on hundreds, thousands, or millions of outcomes and take the right one? And by the way, there are some 400,000 people that die every year in this country because of medical mistakes. That's 10 times the number that die in automobile accidents. We can eliminate that. But let's go further. We've all seen the self-driving car. You've seen this on TV. You might have seen one drive by. They're really amazing. But the impact of society is much greater than you think. Because technically, we just need 92% fewer vehicles. Because your vehicle is parked 92% of the time. And if you can drive the cost of getting from point A to point B down below you owning a vehicle, there's no reason to own a vehicle. One will show up autonomously. There'll be no one there. There'll be no one driving it. There'll be no wheel in the car. You get in and it takes you to a point. And this is what happens in New York City taxi fares per mile once you automate. They go from $3 a mile to about 40 cents a mile. And that reduces traffic accidents everywhere in the world by 95%. And it's so safe that I predict that human driving will be outlawed. Because who would want a human behind the wheel? In fact, there shouldn't be a wheel. Think about it. Now, here's an interesting thing. Humanoid robotics companies, the biggest, best, most advanced in the world, almost a dozen have been bought by Google in the last 2 years. What do they know that you don't know? Or rather, what do they know that you didn't know until now? So the question in the future isn't about the perfect job. Good salary and benefits, job security, close to home, and everything else. That's actually the wrong question. We're going to give our kids, go to school, learn so that you get the perfect job. There won't be a perfect job. It's the wrong question. And I think Bucky Fuller said it best. We should do away with the absolute specious notion that everybody has to be a living. We keep inventing jobs because of the false idea that everybody has to be employed as some kind of drudgery. You ever feel that way? And the true business of people should be to go back to school and think about whatever it was they were thinking about before somebody came along and told them that they had it. So that brings us really sort of full circle. And suggests to, I think, all of us that in fact, jobs aren't good. They were a necessary evil, and in fact, they were a form of human bondage. We were enslaved and have been enslaved and continue to be enslaved by the fact we have to get up, we have to go to work, we have to produce something, and then we have to come home. And we're only producing something so that we can put food on our table. Get that. But if that goes away, what if this is the most incredible human opportunity that we've ever seen? That we finally get to ponder, why are we here? I don't mean why are you here listening to me. I mean, why are we here? Because we weren't here to make widgets, to go to some whatever job it is. We're much more people. And that brings us to my final point, which is this is an opportunity that we have, that we've been granted, to choose to take for the next Renaissance. Just as in the first Renaissance, it was an amazing awakening of the human spirit, where people looked to the heavens and pondered what it meant. People looked to the heavens and pondered what it would be and how one would travel to the stars and beyond. People opened up their hearts. They opened up their minds. They created art, dance, music. This is our possibly one chance that we be free to do exactly the same thing. I, for one, can't wait to see you all. Thank you so much.
Yeah, so see, the reason I wanted to share this was that I want at least a few who are seriously looking to start pondering. This is what Baba raised, this is what you're raising. And it's interesting to see how we need to change. Just because, see, if you take a long-term view of history, long-term means only a few hundred years. See, there was nothing like a joint stock company a couple of hundred years ago. Right? People worked without it. There was nothing like this kind of malls and this and that, which we have started seeing as the basic stuff. Engineering as a discipline is a relatively recent kind of a thing. And therefore, to be able to get locked into what we have so far, I think this is the be all and end all, is I think the one that I want to really advise. I have a very favorite author, this was actually, I have a very favorite author called George Mikesh. He's actually a Hungarian, so he writes as George Mikes. And among various things he wrote, he was once writing, he's from Hungary, and he was writing of a lady from Hungary whom he met in New York. And he asked her, so how is New York? And she said, New York is the same as Budapest. So he says, I was wondering, how on earth can New York be the same as Budapest? And then I went to look at her day,